Hey, Stephen Yanni here doing the junkyard crawl at Bernison Auto Wrecking jumbo style with a couple of huge International Harvester full-sized heavy-duty trucks. This is a K-Series. These were made between 1941 and 1949. This is an R-Series made between 1953 and 1967. Now, they're both ancient, but actually this R-Series was a major improvement over the K-Series, which is to be expected. And a variety of things are shared and different between these trucks. The major thing with the K-Series is the cab. It's quite a bit smaller than the R-Series, and it has this really cool pop-out windshield. There's actually a crank inside of the cab that allows the windshield in one piece to actually come out, kind of like a Volkswagen microbus, but inside the cab there's a chrome handle. You rotate that, and the windshield actually comes out. Looks to be it's fully extended right there, but a nice touch on a hot day at the gravel pit. And something inside, of course, we see a very narrow cab. This one has a 5-speed manual transmission. And you might wonder about brakes back in 1941. Were they hydraulic? What were they? Well, this is an owner's manual, believe it or not, that I found inside this truck. It is definitely not something I brought. But here we have an image of the Hydrovac power cylinder. And it says here, the Hydrovac is installed to make available to the driver a greater pressure on hydraulic brake system than could be exerted by foot pressure alone. And here it is right here behind this panel. Well, if we look down here, here is the panel bolted on, but thanks to New England X-ray rust, there is the vacuum tank, the boost tank right there. So this 1941 through 53, 41 through 49 K-Series does have air brakes. Now, by contrast, we go over to this R200. And again, the R-Series trucks were built between 1953 and 67. And the cab on this is quite different. We see a one-piece, almost wraparound windshield. And again, no division, and that is permanently installed. The rubber gasket does not allow for the window to move forward. So I guess, you know, the idea of a weatherproof cab, warm in the winter, cool-ish in the summertime, won out over an articulated windshield. Inside, we look inside and we'll see this is much wider than the K-Series cab, and bucket seats, 5-speed transmission again. But if you look at the tachometer in this one, it maxes out at 4,000 RPM. Now that may sound like not a lot, but in the world of big truck engines, well, $4,000 is a bunch, especially for a diesel. Now these aren't diesels. Diesels were available, but this is a gasoline powered truck. And let's take a look at that. These R-Series trucks were available all the way from half-tonners all the way up to 10-wheelers with 45-ton capacity. So you got to wonder what's under the hood. Okay, this is the Black Diamond Flathead 6. Now, we see right here on top of the engine what looks to be a tin valve cover, but that's not actually a valve cover. That is a cover for the flathead, and it covers the spark plug wires. But look at this. Here's a piece of sticker, valve lash. It says here 24, whatever it is, an old remnant of the valve lash adjustment manufacturer's assessment. But we see here again, it is a flathead engine, which is to say that the intake and exhaust manifolds enter and exit from the same side of the engine. The valves are actually in the surface of the block. Pretty asthmatic stuff. Now, we saw a 4,000 RPM tachometer inside the truck. Well, that's because this engine does not want to go near $4,000. And this is actually a governor right here. It's a vacuum module, a pod, that actually controls engine speed and keeps it below 4,000 RPM for maximum fuel economy and, of course, engine life. But again, that's a flathead underneath that tin valve cover. Now, one thing that's kind of cool is 1950 was the first year that International changed its logo from the triple diamond logo to this. This is Raymond Loewy, who was a famed industrial designer, did a lot of work for Studebaker, but he also did the International Harvester logo. Now, International Harvester made tractors. And if you look at this, it's a guy on a tractor coming at you. Here's the wheels, here's the driver's head, the farmer's head. And again, 1950, first year for that iconic International Harvester logo. Now, going back to the K-Series of 1941 through 49, the logo on the front of this is the pre-Loewy triple diamond right there, that logo, 3 diamonds. And speaking of diamonds, let's look under the hood on this one. Another Black Diamond 6. In fact, the same basic engine. There's the governor. There's the tin cover for the flathead cylinder head. Same carburetor. And these engines were available in a variety of sizes, ranging from all the way down to 318, and then 361, then 372, 401, 450, and even 501 cubic inches, all of them looking pretty much the same. But the black paint on the back of this one, that would indicate this is a black diamond. There's a green diamond, a red diamond, but again, that black diamond is part of this engine. So it's crazy to think this 41 through 49 K series has the same engine as that 53 through 67 R series. Now, there were optional engines starting in 56. This line was gone by 56, but that R series could have had a V8 in 1956 onward. Yes, it could have had a V8. Now, the wheels on international trucks are unique. We've seen this in previous videos, but on this KB, we see here that the rim is actually the farthest protruding item. The hub itself is inset. The point of this was that driving through a gravel pit or a forest, the risk of knocking the hub apart or damaging the cap is eliminated. A lot of other trucks, this stuff sort of protruded and stood tall, but on international trucks, it was one of their design features that stuff was brought in flush with the wheel. We see it also on this R series. This wheel, the spokes are actually, there's almost zero offset. There's no outward like you see on a Ford or a bigger truck, but this is the only thing, the only vulnerable item is this big cast iron center inspection, but again, basically flat. Another international harvester trait. Now the gas tanks on these are kind of interesting. On this KB series, the tank is inside the cab right here, and I think you sit on it, in fact. Here's the filler neck, and you know, I mean, the safety standards of the day were not what they are now. Everybody seemed to survive just fine, but on this bigger R series here, the saddle tanks on this puppy here, certainly more capacity, but these are made of steel, no aluminum fuel tanks in 1953 through 67 when these things were built. Now the rear axles on these things are similar but not the same, and we talked about the air brakes on this KB series, and there it is at the back. Look at that rear axle, and you'll see the the air lines, the pneumatic lines, and those are connected to the brake pedal and of course the vacuum system up front. And the actuators are there. And again, that rear axle has a bolt-on rear cover, which is interesting and unique. But on the R series, we see that axle's big brother coming down lower. This one is a larger truck, and we can see here the vacuum, the brake boosters right here are much larger, and that rear axle is also massive, which brings us to another interesting detail on international trucks. International is one of the few companies that made its own rear axles. In fact, if we look at the rear of this one, the International logo, Raymond Loewy's driver on tractor logo, is actually cast into the differential cover right in the middle. And now that rear axle cover does not come off. It's a different type axle than in the KB truck. And again, there's the International logo cast into the center. When I was a kid, I used to build Ertl truck models, and there was a variety of them, the 4300 series 10-wheeler. And I remember looking at the rear axle in those kits and seeing the International logo. And here it is, all the way back in 1953. So again, this one here is a box truck. Not sure what's inside. This one, a dump truck. But again, that was the beauty of international trucks. They were essentially blank slates, workhorses. You'd buy these trucks and then mount the body of your choice. Dump trucks, oil delivery trucks, flatbeds, tow trucks, snow plows, all of that stuff. These trucks, again, were the workhorses. Now, international trucks were made into the 1980s. I believe Navistar merged with International, but the heyday of international trucks was the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and then in the 70s. 70s were a tough time for the American truck industry as competition and fuel prices went through the roof. But these are two international trucks that are similar, but not the same. So if you like this video, well, that's the story of these big international trucks. Stay tuned for a lot more here on the Steve Maggs YouTube channel, Junkyard Crawl.